Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this Thursday evening. Um, Today we're going to be joined by Nish, and Nish is from a Hindu Bengali family in South London. He's got a profound interest in identity, morality, and Vedic knowledge. His spiritual journey led him to the teachings of Srila Prabhupada and the Bhagavad Gita. For the past decade, he served as a monk at the Bhaktivedanta Manor Temple, witnessing the transformative aspect of the teachings of the Gita on various aspects of life. He's also an enthusiastic actor, so he brings dramas from the Bhagavad Gita to life. So we're really lucky to be joined by him today, and I think Nish, you're going to be speaking a little bit about the origin of the Bhagavad Gita and why the Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Wow. So correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a war that was taking place, and a couple of different events led up to that war, and then we see Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield, and the Bhagavad Gita is being spoken there. I think a lot of us are familiar with this setting of the Gita, but how did we get to that place? Would you like to give us a brief overview of what you'll be covering today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's quite a broad question. So today I'll be covering, yeah, a bit about the background behind how the Bhagavad Gita was spoken, how the war occurred, who were the main parties in that war, um, what were the incidences leading up to that war. Also, what is the point of it all? Like, what is the purpose of this whole kind of historical incident, and how do we actually see it, not just from a kind of historical point of view, but how does it benefit us to know about this piece of history, um, and why was this specific this conversation, which is the Bhagavad Gita, why is this like so kind of central to this whole kind of series of historical incidences, of which you could say the Bhagavad Gita is like the kind of the essence of it all. So yeah, those are the kind of things I guess, I'll be talking about today.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much, Nish. Um, where would you like to start?
Um, Wherever
Would
you
you,
want.
would
I
you
mean,
like to-
do you want me to kind of start off, and then you want to kind of bounce off me
yeah,
and ask questions
yeah,
and things?
that sounds like a plan.
Okay, fine, fine. Um, okay, I tell you what, let's do this then. Can I share a PowerPoint?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's do that. Can you give me have you given me
You should be able to, yeah.
okay, brilliant. Okay, everyone can see?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Also, I mean, obviously, as this conversation progresses, I'm happy to have it be interactive. So if people want to unmute and ask questions, by all means, feel free to. Um, so I guess today I want to kind of look at very much the kind of background to the Bhagavad Gita, as we just mentioned, and it's really steeped in this massive um, epic history called the Mahabharata. Okay, so I don't know, maybe if I can get a show of hands. Um, Actually, no, let's do the other way around, because I think some of you would have heard of it. Maybe hands up who has not heard of the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, sorry, if there's anyone. Anyone who has not heard of the Mahabharata. All right. Looks like most of you have. Okay. Yeah. Okay, wonderful. So that will help. So Mahabharata, as you can see, it's everything. It's history, it's instructions, it's life lessons, and ultimately is establishing the principles of life. And it's for those of you who are acquainted with spirituality, especially from the Vedic background, will know that Mahabharata is one of the central historical pieces for us in our lives. So let's just look at it this way. There is a background to Vedic scriptures. It's said that Vedic scriptures, if you look at this diagram, you can see that it's divided into two types. You've got, now, of course, I'm going to make it as simple as possible. So I will use a few Sanskrit words here and there, but I will, if I do, I will make sure that I give the English for it as well. Okay. But there are two types of Vedic literatures. There is the Shruti and there is the Smriti. Shruti is basically scriptures that are given, they're direct revelations given by Krishna himself. So you can see in the top left-hand corner, it says Shruti, next to it says revealed absolute truth. This is basically exactly how Krishna gave it, is then passed on from Krishna down the generations from, from guru, which is like teachers, to disciples. So it's going down this kind of like lineage, this kind of educational lineage from like teachers to disciples. And the whole idea behind the Shruti scriptures is that all the words, all the kind of knowledge that's there has to remain unchanged. It cannot be tampered with in any way. So within the Vedas, you've got the original Vedic scriptures like Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, etc., etc., and they're exactly unchanged from how they were from when Krishna originally spoke them. Because the understanding is that all this Vedic knowledge is actually originally coming from Krishna. Then on the other side, if I bring your attention to the diagram as well, you can see that across from Shruti, you've got what is called Smriti. Smriti is remembrances. These are scriptures which are not directly given by Krishna, so they're not direct revelations, but they are scriptures based on commentaries, supplementary informations, not necessarily given by Krishna himself, but just like further kind of you could say elucidations and reflections on Vedic knowledge. Within this whole thing, this whole Vedic knowledge, you got all sorts of different subjects being covered, from not just spirituality. We're looking at politics, economics, health, wealth, military, diplomacy, all like different aspects of life are covered within these books. It's said that obviously now the Smriti, they have to be based, all the knowledge that's in the Smriti has to be based on whatever's talked about in the Shruti. It's like almost like, whatever statement you make, it has to be, if you're going to like, let's say go to a court of law, and whatever statement you make, it has to be based on whatever's mentioned in the law books. So the Shruti are like the law books. Whatever's in the commentaries in the Smriti has to be based on the truths that are given in the Shruti. Otherwise, it won't hold validity. Okay. So now, if I again now come back to the Smriti, which is the right side, these are the commentaries. You can see there are different types of commentaries here. Within that, you'll see directly coming down from Smriti, you've got rituals, you've got tantras, you've got pancharatras, you've got Puranas, you've got itihasas. Now, that box there where it says itihasas means history. Okay, itihas means history. In the Vedic scriptures, there are many histories, but there's two principal histories that are talked about. I don't know, does anyone know what those two principal histories are? In case you might know. Anyone like to share?
Ramayan,
Okay, very good. Yeah, so Ramayana is one, and
Mahabharat,
very good, very good. I don't know who said that, but well done. Yeah. So the two main histories are Mahabharata and Ramayana. But it's also mentioned that whatever is contained in the Mahabharata Ramayana, especially the spiritual lessons and truths that are spoken, as well as not just the spiritual and the psychological understandings that are given in there, they have to be based on what the Shrutis have originally said. So if they're going against the Shruti, they wouldn't be considered valid. Okay. These itihasas are not given by Krishna directly. They are given later on by different commentators, authorized commentators with basis in Shruti. Okay, so it's good that you understand that itihasas, the histories, the two main ones are Ramayana and Mahabharata. So today we're going to be looking at the Mahabharata in more detail. Actually, I have a question before I go to the next slide. Mahabharata is what kind of scripture? Is it a Shruti or a Smriti? Based on what I've just said. Any ideas? Yeah, I don't know who said that. Smriti, yeah, it's remembrance, right? It's not given directly by Krishna. It's things that have been recorded later. That's right. So there's a great sage called Vyas, and he's the one that recorded the knowledge that's in the Mahabharata. Okay, so is Gita Shruti or Smriti?
Shruti.
Okay, why?
Because Lord Krishna spoke himself.
What? So that's why it's Smriti?
Shruti.
Okay, very good. Yes, I just wanted to ask these questions so you understand the difference, right? Mahabharata is Smriti. It's not spoken by Krishna himself. It's recorded later. Gita is Shruti because it is spoken by Krishna. Which book is Gita part of?
Mahabharatam.
Okay, so now the question is this. If Gita is Shruti and Mahabharata is Smriti, how can Gita be part of the Smriti?
Because in Mahabharatam time, Lord Krishna was around and he speaks wording himself.
Right, okay. So yeah, it's almost like, you know, when you go to university and you study a book, like a textbook, and within that textbook, you know, sometimes they give you like an excerpt of a conversation, right? That is spoken separately, and they say, here is an excerpt of a conversation, right? So that's the way you should see it. Gita is a weird one. It's a weird actually position it's in because Gita is both considered Shruti and Smriti. Because it's Shruti, because it's directly spoken by Krishna, but it's Smriti because it's part of the Mahabharata, right? So there are very few books that are like that, but Gita is one of those, which is both Shruti and Smriti. So that's kind of unique actually about the Gita. Okay, I'll carry on and then I'll pause. Then I guess I don't know if Dhaval will want to ask me some questions so we can get the conversation going. But
No, this is really good. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah. Should I carry on a bit more? Or?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So here you have the massive battlefield. This is the battlefield of. Well, let me ask. Actually, let me ask you all. Okay. So let's do a little quick test here. Since you're all part of this thing Gita sections, and since we're talking about the Gita, I'm hoping maybe some of you will know these facts. Okay. So question 1. When was the Bhagavad Gita spoken? Roughly. Any ideas?
About 5,000 years ago?
Very good, very good. Yes, it was about 5,000, just over 5,000 years ago. Question 2, where was the Bhagavad Gita spoken?
Kurukshetra?
Kurukshetra, in
Very good.
battlefield
Yes.
of Kurukshetra.
Battlefield of Kurukshetra. Yeah, so, and that place is still existing today. You can go there. It's about 80 miles north of Delhi. In fact, we went there last year. We had a retreat and we went there actually last year. So very nice. Okay, next question. Who was the conversation of the Bhagavad Gita between?
Arjuna.
And Arjuna.
Very good. Yes, so it's Krishna and Arjun. Okay, this is an interesting one. Why was this conversation spoken? Maybe this one, just so I don't get everyone falling at the same time. Maybe anyone like to put their hands up to share why this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. Okay, Navania.
I think this conversation happened.
Hello, are you still talking?
Yeah, sorry, it got it got muted by accident.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that it happened because Arjuna, in the middle of the battlefield, he saw that his family members were and gurus and his cousins were all fighting against each other, and he started wondering if it was worth it to win the war because like people are getting sacrificed.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, good answer there. So basically, this war was a massive apocalyptic war. It was. I mean, I tell you how big. People think Mahabharata is this just like an Indian thing, but it's not. This Mahabharata was extending all over the world. In fact, the Kurukshetra was the central point of the focal point of the war. But actually, the war itself, the field of activities of this war, was actually more extended. Just like, you have the Second World War. It's not that the Second World War just fought in one point. It's not that just one city in Germany where the Second World War took place. The war would have taken place in different places in France, Britain, Germany, Italy, Russia, whatever it may be, right? So similarly, the focal point of the war was Kurukshetra, but there were other areas around. In fact, there are historical records from them which actually indicate that even if you go as far down south as Agra and all these places, the war was still being fought in different places. But the main place was Kurukshetra, and there were tribes from all over the world that took place. When I say tribes, not just tribes, kingdoms, from all over the world that took place in this war. For example, you had this kingdom called the Madradesh, and their soldiers fought in the war. And Madradesh is basically modern day like Persia, this kind of area. You had Gandhar, which is obviously modern day Kandahar in Afghanistan. There was in Mahabharata, it talks about a tribe called the Shin tribe, which is described as kind of like yellowish complexion from the east, right? So it doesn't take a genius to work out that they're referring to the Chinese. In fact, in India, even to this day, in many kind of like traditional places, they refer to as Chinese people as Jindesh. Shin became Jin. They fought on the side of a warrior called Karna, who's one of the main personalities within the Mahabharata. So like this, millions and millions of people took part in this war. And obviously, millions and millions of people actually died in this war. It was truly a global situation. Okay, so this is the kind of backdrop to the whole kind of Bhagavad Gita. Now, I want to also mention this because, we talked about why this Bhagavad Gita was spoken. So the Bhagavad Gita itself was spoken, as Navania mentioned, because the main warrior of the Bhagavad Gita, which is Arjun, he, just about when he's about to start the war, he tells Krishna, Senayor baro madhye prashthe, which means take me, Krishna, take me to the middle of the battlefield. And as Krishna takes him, Krishna positions himself in front of some key people on the other side. One was a person called Bhishma, one was a person called Drona. And the thing is, even though they were on the other side, still, they were actually very close to Arjun. In fact, Bhishma was like, you could say, his foster grandfather. And Drona was actually his teacher, but due to force of circumstances, they had to fight on opposing sides. And it's interesting that Krishna deliberately took Arjun to that side, in front of those people, just so that he gets affected. He gets emotionally affected by seeing his loved ones on the other side and being forced, duty bound, to fight them and potentially kill them. It's because of seeing them, they got so emotionally affected that he actually ends up having a nervous breakdown, you could say. He has an existential crisis. And he actually says to Krishna, like, what am I doing? Why am I about to fight this war? And that goes on to more further questions like, what is the point of fighting this war? What is the meaning behind it? Where am I going? Where am I coming from? It doesn't make any sense. And so because of the whole situation, he actually then decides, you know what, Arjuna, I can't fight. He was literally having physical symptoms of like a breakdown. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you study the Bhagavad Gita, but like they actually talk about in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, like his limbs are shaking, his lips are quivering, he starts to perspire, and the bow falls from his hand on the chariot, and he basically collapses onto the chariot, basically saying, Krishna, I can't fight this war. And actually, it's that makes Krishna then speak the Bhagavad Gita to make Arjuna understand what is the purpose of life, what is duty, what is your mission in life, and why you should do your duty no matter what the situation is, and also the deeper questions like where are you coming from, where are you going, and so on and so forth. So the whole Mahabharata is a massive you could say it's a 4-generational historical epic with lots of drama, romance, fighting, intrigue, politics, everything. And it all culminates in the conversation of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the creme de la creme of this whole historical epic. Now, if I may just share one more thing on this, and then maybe at this point I will pause, so maybe Dhaval and myself can then have a conversation, and whoever else wants to join. But the reason Krishna does this, because the question is, okay, why did Krishna have to create a whole entire epic just for this one 45-minute conversation to take place? Okay, so there's a few things. It's said that there are different ways for people to learn, people to get knowledge. One way is didactic. Didactic means that it's instructions, right? Just like a teacher gives instructions to a student, right? Just direct instructions, do this, don't do that, so on and so forth, right? That's one way of giving knowledge. There's another way of giving knowledge, which is demonstrative. Demonstrative meaning that instead of just giving instructions straight up, you teach the knowledge through practical examples. Through, like, I'm sure those of you who are teachers on this call, I don't know if there are parents on this call, if you have children, you know that sometimes the best way in which you can teach someone is through stories, right? Through stories, through pastimes, relationships between people. In fact, I would say that's probably one of the most powerful ways in which people actually learn. Okay, so that's what demonstrative. And then finally, you've got decision. Decision meaning that once you learn didactically, you learn demonstratively, then you have the opportunity to make your decisions based on what you've learned. And this is what the Mahabharata is all about. It's basically teaching us through not just instructions, but through the actions of people and what they've done. So you learn through that. And then through that, you get to then know how do you make your decisions in life, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in practical life skills, based on what the Mahabharata gives you. Because the Mahabharata gives you everything from psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, militarily, philosophically, you name it. Everything that you can possibly learn about life is there in the Mahabharata. And what Krishna does, he gives it in the form of history and action and drama, because he knows that is what people are going to respond to. Like, for example, even now, right, most people, they love entertainment. They love going to the movies. They love going to, I don't know, the theater or watching soap operas, right? Because you're relating to it. You're relating to the human element of it. So then Krishna, obviously himself, is, he knows that, okay, fine, people are going to respond to that human element. So therefore, I will orchestrate this whole massive 4-generational historical epic through which I can then impart, I can inject the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. Because if you were to give it separately by itself, it's debatable how many people would take it. But when you give it through a life-changing historical epic, which millions of people around the world are affected by, then naturally that is something that people are going to resonate with more. Okay, so I'm going to pause here and maybe hand over to Dhaval to, take it forward.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nish. That's been such a really good background and understanding of how the Bhagavad Gita came to take place and this big war that was happening. I found it really interesting that you talked a little bit about Krishna sort of poking Arjuna or putting him in a specific situation where that evoked these feelings of fear in him, these feelings of helplessness, and evoked this crisis. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit more about the relationship between Krishna and Arjuna, because I know that they've been quite good friends, but obviously in Bhagavad Gita that relationship changes a little bit. So would you be able to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, what it is, Krishna, obviously as far as the Vedic scriptures are concerned, he is the supreme, the divine consciousness. Yeah, you could say like he's often referred to as the supreme personality, but obviously, in modern terms, they would consider him in modern cultural literatures like, God, right? Whatever you want to call it, or like the central personality from which everything is coming from. But what Krishna does is that, to connect with Krishna, it's about love. Actually, that's what Krishna's looking for. He's looking for like a mood of love through which we can attain some intimate connection with him. That's for everyone. And so what he does that he will often himself, incarnate in certain ways on earth and put himself in a very intimate position with people so they can relate to him in a very personal way. So when he came during the pastimes of the Mahabharata, he positioned himself in actually a royal dynasty, which was the kind of like related to the royal dynasty that Arjun was part of. So in those days, the lands were divided into kingdoms, and there are different dynasties running different kingdoms. So one of the key dynasties at that time was called you could say it was called the Kurus, or a bigger name for it was the Kauravas. And it said that in those days, that area, the part of the world that is now modern day India, was very, very powerful. Just like, nowadays you could say America is very, very powerful. Like this is the age of America, let's say, and before it was Britain was very, very powerful. So, throughout history, we see that different lands, different countries become very powerful. So at that time, that ancient India was very, very powerful. And the Kauravas were like the ruling dynasty at that time. And the Kauravas had descendants like the Pandavas, who were like an offshoot of the Kauravas. And Arjun himself belonged to the Kaurava dynasty. Now, the Kauravas were also related to another dynasty. So these royal dynasties were kind of like related to each other. Some are closely related, some are distantly related. So there was another dynasty at that time existing, which was called the Yadus, the Yadu dynasties. And so Krishna actually positioned himself to be born in the Yadu dynasty. So he was actually, you could say, a distant cousin of Arjun. So, and even though distant cousins, but because the royal families would mingle with each other, just like, for example, you have the modern age, you have like the Habsburgs and the Bourbon dynasty, or like the Windsor dynasty, right? Like the different kind of dynasties that have occurred in the modern age, right? In Europe, for example. So similarly, you had all these different dynasties that were there in ancient India, and not just India, but also beyond. And they would mingle with each other. The kids of the kings and the queens would be like friends with each other and things like that. So because of that, Arjun and his brothers, they were all kind of like close friends with Krishna. They grew up together. So as you mentioned, Dhaval, yeah, his relationship was very brother-like. They would go to, they would like hang out together. They would like, to go hunting together as warriors would back in the day. They would
Wow.
like, have great conversations and friendly conversations. But all this time, it's not that Krishna himself revealed his spiritual elevation to Arjun. Because you know what happens when you do that, the relationship gets affected. And he didn't want that. He wanted that brotherly love with Arjun. He wanted Arjun to feel that, look, I'm your friend. You have to be comfortable with me. I don't want you to feel like I'm something, so gigantic for you that you can't relate with me. You know what I mean? So he put himself in that position of that mood of like intimate, sweet friendship.
Wow.
Now, and that was basically the relationship that Arjun would have with them. They would joke together and everything. It all changed, however, for the better. It all changed in the Bhagavad Gita because when Arjun had his breakdown, he instinctively, there was something deep inside him that was telling him that, you know what, whilst I see Krishna as my cousin, as my friend, I know intuitively that there's something deeper about him. He's not just an ordinary person, even though I relate to him like an ordinary person, joking and laughing with him. Sometimes he might even make fun of him. I know there's something special about this person. And throughout my life, in whatever situations I've been in, Krishna's always been there and given always the right solutions for me and my family to get out of danger, right? And again, there's a whole history behind it. But the whole thing kind of came to you could say, a crux. When Arjun has that nervous breakdown, he turns to Krishna, and something deep inside him, in his own soul, came out and said that, you know what? I look at all the people around me and I realize that, you know what? You're the one that I need to surrender to. You're the only person that can actually guide me in the right way. And so there's a famous verse where it actually says, I don't know what to do. I'm confused because of my weakness. Now I'm surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. Now I'm going to be your disciple. So the relationship changes from friendship to disciple. And that's when Krishna himself then takes on the role of the guru, the spiritual master, the teacher, the mentor, and guides Arjuna as to what is the actual meaning, that the deeper understanding behind life and things like that. So it was a bit of a watershed moment in their friendship, but it was a good one. And it's not that the intimate love that they had went away. It was still there. It just got enhanced even more, actually. Even though it went from just being friend to being spiritual master to disciple, but they still had that friendly sweetness that they had before. So Krishna spent that time in Arjun's life developing that sweetness before he can take on the role of the instructor, because he knows that no matter what happens now, Arjun is going to trust him fully, and he can give himself fully to Arjun. Because we know that as well, that when you share something with someone, if they trust you, they're going to more likely to accept what you have to say. You try to convince someone who you're not sure about. Imagine if some salesman comes to you and tries to convince you to buy something and you don't know who they are. It's like, oh, I don't know. You're just in it for the money. You're trying to get something out of me. But imagine if your close friend, your brother comes to you, your father, your son, and says to you that, look, Dhaval, I think you should really check this out. It would be really good for you. You're going to trust them. So Krishna spent that time making Arjun as deeply friendly to him as possible, so that when the time comes for him to give this deep message, Arjun is able to imbibe it fully.
Wow. That's amazing. It's really interesting to see how that dynamic changed and what the deeper purpose behind that friendship was. Obviously, Krishna and Arjun were great friends, but that helped enhance the relationship with the Bhagavad Gita. That's really beautiful. Thank you so much. I had another question about you mentioned that this was obviously a great big war. The whole the whole world was involved. That's how you made it seem. So many countries, so many regions, like millions and millions of soldiers. I'd love to hear a little bit more about what measures were taken um, before the war took place, because I know that Arjun and the Pandavas and they didn't really want to go to war, And Arjun says in the Gita that, what good will come from this fighting, right? So would you be able to share a little bit about what measures were taken and what incidents took place that led up to this war?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's quite a big
It's a big
question.
question. Maybe just
Okay,
a couple of yeah.
Okay, let's do a bit of a let's talk a bit about the Mahabharata, because I feel like I've talked around the Mahabharata, whereas not
Mhm.
exactly talking like the Mahabharata, shall we say. So maybe let's just share a bit, then that'll give a bit more narrative to this whole situation actually. Okay. Mahabharata, let's first look at the name first itself. In the olden days, there was a great king called Bharat. Okay. So the Mahabharata name literally relates, would mean the story of the descendants of King Bharat. Okay, so this is a historical thing. This is something that a lot of modern people get mixed up, especially the modern media. They see the Mahabharata as a mythology, right? But you understand that it's not mythology, it's actually a history. Yes, there might be supernatural things happening in it, which is why people can't accept it nowadays. But you have to understand that in previous ages, what was going on in civilization was much more developed than what we see now in the modern age, which we call Kali Yuga, right? The age of Kali, right? Dark age, you could say. We're living in a somewhat degraded age now. There was much more supernatural things happening in the previous ages. So Mahabharata means the story of the descendants of King Bharat. But it has another name as well. So Bha, if you look at the word Mahabharat, if we divide into Mahabharata, right? Mahabharata. The word Maha means great. Okay? This is great in terms of size. It means great in terms of depth. It means great in terms of potency and power. Then you've got the term Bha. Bha comes from Bhaskara, which means the sun. And then Rata comes from the word absorbed. So if you were to put all that together, what it means is absorbed in the light of knowledge, absorbed in the light of spiritual knowledge. This is what Mahabharata is. It's a book that is giving you absorption in the light of true knowledge. Maha also, like I mentioned, means great. And that can mean size-wise as well. Of all the scriptures in the world, Mahabharata is the biggest. It is said that it is 7 to 8 times longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey combined, which are the two biggest Western histories. You can see also, let's take the Bhagavad Gita itself. The Bhagavad Gita is 700 verses long. Okay. We have another big scripture called the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 verses long. Then you have the Ramayana. Does anyone know how many verses the Ramayana is? Any ideas? Any guess? Take a guess. Anyone? No one wants to guess. You're all very shy, aren't you? Okay, no problem. The Ramayana is 24,000 verses. Okay. Now the Mahabharata, it dwarfs it all. 110,000 verses. Okay. It's 110,000 verses. Massive. Right? In this Mahabharata, actually, you know what, Dhaval, can I just show a PowerPoint here, actually?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah? Okay. Sorry, let me just bear with me, everyone. Yeah. Can everyone see this? Yeah. All right. Brilliant. So, okay. The Mahabharata, like I said, 110,000 verses. And these verses are divided into chapters. These chapters in Sanskrit are called parvas. There are 18 parvas, which are chapters. And it's interesting because 18 has got some sort of interesting pattern in the Mahabharata. You've got 18 chapters with many subsections. The war itself, you know, when the Bhagavad Gita was spoken at the dawn of the Kurukshetra war that we mentioned, the war itself was 18 days long, right? And it's interesting that the Bhagavad Gita itself is 18 chapters. So 18 chapters in the Mahabharata, 18 chapters in the Bhagavad Gita, which is a conversation within the Mahabharata, and the war itself was also 18 days long. Okay. Now, before we get to the incidences, I want to also establish how we should view this history. Okay, so how do we understand these Vedic histories? And these are some reference I've given from previous. So one is when you're looking at the Mahabharata, the first level in which you look at it is from the literal level. Literal meaning what happens, the narrative. And obviously the benefit of it is that you enjoy the pastimes, you enjoy the narrative, right? And the effect is you get entertainment from it. Everyone wants entertainment, everyone wants some enjoyment, and Mahabharata is very entertaining, obviously, right? That's why you could say it stood the test of time, you know, thousands of years ago, and still people talk about it to this day, right? But it doesn't just end there. That's just the kind of first layer of looking at the Mahabharata. The second layer of looking at the Mahabharata is the ethical and metaphorical aspect, right? This means, what can you learn from the Mahabharata? What are the morals, the ethics, the values that you can learn from it? Okay, so learning morals, principles, duties, and let me make it very clear. When you go through life, morality is not so straightforward. I'm sure all of you have lived life. All of you have been through your, I don't know, whatever, challenges, obstacles, traumas, this and that. And you know that, you know, doing the right thing is very, very complex. Well, guess what? You cannot get much more complex scenarios than what the Mahabharata gives you in terms of how a human should behave in certain situations. Sometimes you'll see good humans in the Mahabharata behaving in certain questionable manners. And sometimes you see people of dubious character behaving in let's say, you could say externally noble ways. But remember, you have to go dig deeper to know what is the actual values in which one should adopt when learning from the Mahabharata. So one of the things you learn is universal principles, and the understanding is from that you get universal intellectual understanding, plus you get the effect of moral, spiritual, value-based edification. But you know what? As you can see from this diagram, that's still just a second layer. It goes deeper than that. Ultimately, the purpose of looking at the Mahabharata is what we call transcendental meanings behind it. Not just the values, not just the morals, not just the way to live and all those kind of things, right? You know, we talk a lot about these days about dharma. What is your dharma? What is the right dharma to have? How do you bring about good karma in your life? How do you avoid bad karma? This is still a kind of on a material level, though. It's not necessarily transcendental, which is like spiritual. So here we look at the transcendental layer, which is how do we connect the divine? How do we connect with Krishna? How do we experience a deeper sense of happiness that's not just based on money and fame and prestige, but something that actually touches the soul, which is actually our birthright as human beings? Okay, so it's about how to develop that deep connection. This actually is the whole purpose of yoga. Yoga comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, which means to join with something higher, to join with Krishna. Even the Latin word religion comes from religare, which means to reconnect with the divine, right? So the whole idea is that through that you experience deep love, or as we call it, bhakti, or devotion. Now, and like I mentioned before, let me emphasize, this was history. Okay. One of our great sages, his name is Srila Prabhupada. I don't know, some of you may have heard of him. He actually once had a room conversation with a Sanskrit professor who was trying to pass off the Mahabharata as mythology, and he was very emphatic. This was in a conversation 1973 in Paris, and he said, no, it's an itihas. Itihas, if you remember from the beginning of this session, I mentioned it means it's a history. It's actually happened, which makes this world a lot more interesting of a place than what we think it is, right? When you look at what happened in this, right? In fact, Srila Prabhupada even was quoted as saying, rejecting the historicity of this war, of the Kurukshetra war, does violence to the message of Mahabharata. In other words, if you do not value as a historical piece, you are minimizing. You're minimizing what you can actually benefit from and get from the Mahabharata. Okay. I want to also make it very clear about this, because a lot of people, they say, oh, the Bhagavad Gita, is this a book of war? Because, you know, for those of you who have been like, I'm guessing like all of you maybe have been coming on these sessions, you know, do you guys do this like regularly, like every week or something?
Yeah, these are every Thursday.
Right. And, you know, like every Thursday, do you guys talk about the Bhagavad Gita?
Actually, it's funny, we had a whole session on, was the Bhagavad Gita, did the Bhagavad Gita promote war? So it's funny you bring that up.
Perfect. It's very good. Okay, that's good. That's good. So you're all aware that, you know, a lot of people may criticize saying, you know, if this is a divine book and it's like a deep book and it's meant to be something that's going to give us life lessons and, you know, all these kind of things that are going to help us to guide us in life. But hang on a minute, isn't Krishna basically being a warmonger to Arjun by getting him to fight? No, you have to go deeper than that. It's about doing your duty for the higher, deeper, right cause, right? In fact, just going back to what Dhaval you mentioned earlier, you asked about, you know, how did they, you know, like, you know, the war, how it started, did they just jump into it or did they try to avoid it? Well, guess what? They actually tried various ways to actually avoid the war. In fact, one of the chapters, it actually talks about the various ways. This is the Udyog Parva, which is one of the chapters of the Mahabharata, where they look at the ways in which they tried to finish the war. In fact, let me tell you this. The war was actually between two branches of this royal dynasty, right? So you've got the Kauravas, right? The main name of this dynasty is called the Kurus. And the Kurus, you can say they split into the Kauravas on one side and the Pandavas on the other. The Pandavas, you can say, were virtuous. They were actually meant to be the rulers, but the Kauravas cheated them and took the throne by cheating them in a gambling match. And then forced them into exile for 14 years. And when they came back, when the Pandavas came back to reclaim the rightful kingdom of theirs, they refused to give it. Krishna himself went to the Kauravas, headed by their leader, this person called Duryodhana, and he asked that, look, now's the time, can you please give their kingdom back? They've paid their dues because of the unfair gambling match, which you and your cronies had rigged. Now, can you give the kingdom back? Duryodhana rejected it. He went back to the Pandavas to consult. They didn't jump into a war. No. They went back again. Okay, no problem. We are not here to do things rashly. Let's try peaceful means again. Krishna went back again to Duryodhana and he said, okay, look, let's compromise. At least give us half the kingdom back. And again, Duryodhana, who's on the leader of the Kauravas, said, no, I reject you. Krishna went back, consulted the Pandavas. They thought, no, we can't go down the route of catastrophe. Let's try negotiating again. Krishna went back. He asked this leader of the Kauravas, Duryodhana, okay, look, at least give the Pandavas 5 villages to rule over. You know, there's 5 brothers, so let's say each brother has a village to rule over. What was Duryodhana's response? He said to Krishna, Krishna, I'm not even going to give the Pandavas the amount of land that you can fit on the tip of a needle. So be gone. He rejected him again. They tried so many ways to finish the war, right? But only after they exhausted every single avenue did they finally realize we have no choice but to fight this war. Now, here's the thing. War is generally considered anti-enlightenment, and for good reason. It is anti-enlightenment. War is not spiritual or anything like that. Sometimes in life, and this is why the Mahabharata is so deep and is very useful for people to understand this, sometimes to prevent further violence in life and society, initial force is necessary. That's why the Mahabharata even talks about in a society, you need different types of people. You need your teachers, you need your warriors, you need your merchants, you need your workers, you need your artists, you need your sort of all sorts of different types of people, different natures, right? Because it's an ecosystem. We're living in an ecosystem, and Krishna is very specific. You need warriors, you need leaders who are prepared to use force when necessary to keep the harmony in place. Because the Mahabharata does not mince its words. This material world we're living in, the Bhagavad Gita makes the distinction between the spiritual reality and the material reality. Right now, most of us are in the material reality, dealing with the material energy. This material reality is not a utopia. This material reality is don't ever think this material reality would be like a utopian pacifistic paradise. If you want to experience real happiness, you need to tap into the spiritual consciousness. You need to tap into the spiritual reality. You cannot experience it if you're in material consciousness, because material consciousness means duality. It means big, small, rich, poor, justice, injustice. The Mahabharata is very, very clear on that. The Vedas is very clear on that. Even though the Vedas will give you tips on how to maximize your life, how to get good karma, how to get good wealth, health, beauty, family, all of that the Vedas will give you 100%. I mean, we've got like an astrology industry coming from the Vedas. It's like billions of probably pounds every year, right? Where people go to astrology to check out their kind of like charts and things to, get their life kind of like going in the right direction. But at the same time, the Vedas and the Mahabharata does not mince its word. You can try to make your material life here as comfortable as possible. But until you tap into the spiritual consciousness, you're not going to experience real, true happiness. So one of the key things that the Mahabharata talks about is this interesting concept called dharma. Dharma. Now, I'm guessing this is probably, I don't know if so many of you may have heard of this word. You may do, because it is talked about in the Gita, right? Dharma, actually, maybe I'll ask some of you. Can someone maybe share what they think the word dharma might mean? Any ideas? Not Dhawal, because I know Dhawal, and not Snehal, because I know you two know. But maybe anyone else like to venture? Look, we're all being friends here, so there's no right or wrong. I just want to know what your thoughts are on this word.
Dharma is duty, responsibility, or purpose.
Very good. Who said that? What's your name?
Deepa.
Deepa. Thank you, Mrs. Deepa. That is Miss Deepa. Thank you so much for that. Yes. Miss Sugumar.
Yes,
Deepa Sugumar. Yes. Fantastic. Yes. Purpose. Everything in this existence has a certain purpose. Not even just human beings, everything. Like a lion's purpose is to protect its pride and be the apex predator, right? The dharma of a tiger is to hunt. The dharma of sugar is to be sweet. In fact, this great sage Srila Prabhupada actually said this. The dharma of salt is to be salty. Everyone has their dharma, right? You might have also a collection of different dharmas you need to fulfill, which the Mahabharata talks about in detail. Like, let's say, if you're a mother, you've got a dharma as a mother. You as a dharma as a wife. It's called Stri Dharma. If you're a leader, you got the dharma as a leader. What's your duty as a leader? Raj Dharma, right? You got dharma to the community, Kula Dharma. So there's different, Kula means community. So there's different dharmas that every single being in this world has. The Mahabharata at its fundamental level is dealing with the topic of dharma. And this is a beautiful verse here. I'm just giving English here, which basically says, in the Mahabharata, Yudhishthir. So just so you all heard of Arjun, right? Arjun is the main person that Krishna spoke to Bhagavad Gita to. Arjun is a warrior, and he's part of a royal dynasty, and he is part of a bunch of brothers who together are called the Pandavas. Like together, these brothers are called the Pandavas. The eldest of the Pandavas is Yudhishthir, who, by the way, is meant to be the king who got cheated of the kingdom, right? So it says, Arjun is the third brother. So it's Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjun, Nakul, Sahadev. These are the 5 brothers of the Mahabharata. So what it's saying is this: Yudhishthir is the great tree of dharma. Arjun is its trunk. Bhimsen, which is big, long for Bhima, is its branch. Nakul and Sahadev are the unlimited fruits and flowers. And see Sri Krishna, you know, the one that we're all kind of looking at here in Bhagavad Gita. Sri Krishna, the Vedas, the entire Vedic scriptures, and the saintly people are its roots. Okay, so this is what the Bhagavad Gita is all about. This is what the Mahabharata is all about. But on a more practical level, the Mahabharata is basically you could say it's a struggle between 2 branches of a royal dynasty over a kingdom, between a righteous side and you could say a unrighteous side. Okay, which is the Pandavas versus the Kauravas. When the Kauravas actually tried throughout the whole time to actually cheat the Pandavas out of their kingdom. But you know, every single time the Pandavas, they managed to get saved by their well-wishers and ultimately by Krishna. But there was one time when the Kauravas, they invited the Pandavas to a gambling match. And in the gambling, they rigged it and they managed to cheat the Pandavas out of everything and sent them to 14 years of exile. When they came back from that 14 years of exile, when they tried to claim the kingdom back, that's when they refused, the Kauravas refused to give the kingdom back. And that is the roots of how the war started. Now, this is a very, very basic summary of how the Bhagavad Gita started to get spoken. But obviously, there is much more to speak about on the Mahabharata, but I'm conscious of the time, so I don't know. I think we haven't even touched the surface of the Mahabharata yet. But I mean, let's say, Dhaval, maybe you want to give a bit of a steer here.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a really in-depth answer. It's interesting how there were so many different methods that they tried to avoid the war. It's good to go into the details and understand the context of the Gita a little bit more. I'm sure it's going to help everyone in their understanding of the Gita. I would like to ask one more question, but obviously I'm conscious of time. So maybe if you could give like a 1-minute answer. I really want to know. Could you share a little bit about what happened after the Gita was spoken? So we know that,
sure.
we know
Actually,
that
can I do one thing? If
Yeah,
you can give me a couple of minutes, I can show a PowerPoint that actually delineates a very quick run-through summary of each 18 chapter, including the Bhagavad Gita.
each chapter of the Mahabharata.
Yeah, but it won't take long. Like it's literally just like one slide after another slide after another slide.
Okay, yeah, I guess that works. But okay, so what we have is we have some announcements. So I'd love to share that with you all. So maybe while I get the announcements and share with you, maybe you can get that ready, Nish. Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. So just if I can share my screen as well.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
sure.
no, that's okay. So we've got a very, very special course coming up, and that's the Life Hacks course. So that's going to be with Keshav Swami. So I don't know if you can see my screen. I'm just on the website for it, and I'll share the link with you all shortly. But Keshav Swami is going to be delivering this course. It's a 6-week course. It's every Thursday at 8 p.m. So it starts on the 6th of June. So for 6 weeks, we're going to be pausing our Thursday talks. We're going to have these talks with Keshav Swami. And he's going to be talking about life hacks from the Bhagavad Gita. So what does that mean? He's going to be exploring different concepts of how we can take the teachings from the Gita and use them to improve our life, where self-mastery meets self-realization. So we'd love for you to all join. You can see that these are the 5 different sessions, and then there's also a taster session and an open mic Q&A session at the end. There's lots more information on this website, so we'll send this in the chat for you all to take a look. Next week, we also have another wisdom talk, but the following week, we're going to be having our in-person wisdom talk. That's going to be with Ed Inova, and he's a great speaker. He's, I believe he's a consultant at one of the top firms in central London. So we're really lucky to have him. He's also been practicing and studying Gita for the past 20 years. So again, super, super lucky. So we'll share more details about that in the chat. Yeah, should we hand over to Nish? Love, maybe you can take us through this.
Yeah, I'll do very quick because I know obviously time is ticking. So I'll finish very soon. If I can just have a couple of minutes, because at least then by the time we finish this call, you'll have a very, very brief, basic structural understanding of the Mahabharata.
Just
a
quick one. We've had a question in the chat from Danielle. She's asking, is the Life Hacks course live with Keshe? Yes, it is live. So you'll be able to ask your questions. It'll be interactive, just like our Thursday sessions. So yeah, please do come along for that. It's going to be really, really amazing. I'll send the link in the chat now. Cool. Nish, take it away.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, I'm just gonna. So as I mentioned earlier on, the Mahabharata is divided into 18 chapters, and they're called parvas. Parva means like chapter. So what it is, it starts with the first parva, chapter, should I say? It starts with the birth of like the latest generation of the Kuru dynasty. When they were born, the 2 branches, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, were the Kauravas are born in the palace. The Pandavas, due to circumstances, were born in a sacred hermitage in the forest with their father, who was the king, but he went to the forest to do some penance, some spiritual penance and austerities. And that's where the Pandavas were born. Soon enough, when the father, King Pandu, had died, the 5 Pandavas were brought back into the kingdom. The capital of the Kuru dynasty was in Hastinapur, which is now what you call modern day Delhi, around that area of Delhi. Back in the day, Delhi was a big central power. And so then that's where the stage is set of the rivalry between the Pandavas, who had come back from the forest, who were the rightful heirs to the throne, and the Kauravas, who had gotten used to the royal power and privilege and did not want to relinquish the rights of the kingdom, even though they were not actually deserving of that. Okay, so there's a lot that happens in this first chapter. And obviously, eventually the Pandavas get married, the Kauravas obviously get married, they grow up and things like that. As they grow up, and as they're growing up, constantly, the Kauravas are trying to kill the Pandavas off so they can grab the whole kingdom. But they fail again and again. Eventually, the elders of the dynasty decide that, you know what, let's give a portion of land for the Pandavas to rule separately so there's no rivalry. And it's actually a bit of an injustice because the Pandavas end up getting a very arid land as their kingdom, which they end up developing. But by, you could say Krishna's grace, that kingdom, that arid land, becomes the most fertile, beautiful kingdom in the world. So now this makes the Kauravas even more jealous and makes them even more burning with bitterness to try and grab the kingdom of the Pandavas. This leads to the next chapter, where basically the Kauravas challenge the Pandavas to a gambling match because they realize they cannot, you could say, fight them militarily, because the Pandavas were very, very powerful militarily and very skillful. Like Arjuna was a great warrior. They were all great warriors. Anyway, so they challenged them to a gambling match. And in that gambling match, the the Kauravas, through unfair means, managed to cheat the Pandavas out of everything, even to the point where they tried to even snatch away the wife of the Pandavas, who's Queen Draupadi. And it's very insulting. They actually bring Draupadi, dragged her. This is a royal lady, a very cultured lady with, high values and morals and etiquette. They drag Draupadi into the courtroom, right, and laugh at her and snigger at her. And they actually try to, they failed, of course, but they tried to disrobe her so that she's like there, standing there naked, so that they can try and treat her as their personal slave. Thankfully, she got saved. So that didn't happen. But because of the extreme insult and humiliation that Draupadi received from this, and it's said in the scriptures that when a pious lady gets humiliated, the curse that comes upon a dynasty is intense. From that point onwards, it's said that Draupadi, being the warrior lady, the cultured warrior lady she is, she vowed not to tie her hair again until the blood of the Kauravas flows, right? Because, in those days, it says that a woman would tie her hair. It's a sign of culture. But she decided not to tie her hair until the blood of the Kauravas flowed. When Krishna was not there at the gambling match, obviously, but when he found out later about the gambling match, he was angry. He was angry at Yudhishthir and Arjuna and the Pandavas, and he said, "Why did you not bring me there?" And Yudhishthir said, "I was too ashamed to bring you to the gambling match, Krishna." But Krishna said, "You should have brought me there. I would have slaughtered every single person in that courtroom who witnessed this injustice," because he loved them so much. And at that point, Krishna, he actually then said, "I take a vow that in the future there'll be a battle and all the Kaurava family's women, their hair will be loosened." It's said that in the ancient Vedic culture, when a woman's husband dies and the woman becomes a widow, they would not tie their hair up after that. They would let it loose. So what Krishna is indirectly saying is that because of the injustice that has been given to Draupadi, this noble lady, all the women are going to become widows on the Kauravas. In other words, all the warriors on the Kaurava side are going to die. This is the second chapter. Third chapter, Vanaparva. This is where the Kauravas, because of the unfair gambling, they managed to get the Pandavas exiled and they go to the forest. However, this is a very key thing you have to understand. When righteous people find themselves in a wrong situation, they don't get bitter about it. They adjust their expectations. They accept their situation. They aspire for a higher connection, which is what the Pandavas did. They had many adventures in the forest. They actually had many discussions with the great hermits and sages that were living in the forest. They were in the forest 13 years. One of the conditions of being in the forest was that at the end of it, they would then, on the 14th year, they have to go incognito, in hiding, where they cannot be found out. If they were found out by the Kauravas, they would have to then spend another 14 years in the forest. Thankfully, they did not get found out. So they spent the 14 years incognito, disguised as other people in another kingdom. Then, 5th chapter, you have the Udyog Parva. They finished the 14 years, the 13 years exile, the 14th year in hiding, and now they're going to try to avoid the war. But as I mentioned earlier on, Krishna went to the Kauravas again and again, but the Kauravas rejected him again and again to give back the rightful kingdom. So now war was set. There was no avoiding it. Both sides started to build up allies in the war. They started to get kingdoms to join them from all over the world. Massive. Like basically it's the original apocalyptic world war. 6th chapter, the war commences. It's called Bhishma Parva. The great grandsire of the Kaurava dynasty, Bhishma, was guiding the Kauravas, and the Pandavas were guided by their leaders as well. This chapter is very significant. Why is this chapter very significant, dear folks? Any ideas?
The vow that he took.
Sorry?
The vow that he took. Bhishma.
Vow who took?
Bhishma.
No. He did take a vow, but that's not why this chapter is significant. Why is this chapter significant?
Because he said he would kill Arjun.
No, there's something more than that. Think about what you're doing here each week.
Bhagavad Gita.
That's right. It's the start of the war. This is the start. This chapter, the 6th chapter of the Mahabharata, is when the war starts. And that's why this is where the beginning of this chapter, the Bhagavad Gita, is spoken. Yeah? So keep this in mind in the future. If anyone asks you what part of the Mahabharata is the Gita in, you can tell them 6th chapter. 6th chapter, the start of the war. Yeah? Bhishma was the leader of the Kauravas. He was in command for 10 days. After 10 days, he fell. 7th chapter, the next Kaurava leader took his role, Drona, right? The military teacher of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. He lasted from the 11th to the 15th day of the war. Then he fell. 8th chapter, the next Kaurava leader came forward to become the commander of the Kaurava side. His name was Karna. He lasted 16th and 17th day of the war. Then he fell. Then 9th chapter of the war is called the Shalya Parva. This is where Shalya took on the role of the leaders. On the 18th day of the war, he fell. By this time, every single person on the Kaurava side had been annihilated, destroyed, slaughtered, massacred, finished. The war, you could say, is pretty much won. The Pandavas had won the war. Massive epic. I'm compressing it very quickly here. 10th day is called Soptik Parva. A big injustice is done. One of the members of the Kaurava side, his name is Ashwatthama, he goes at night into the Pandava camp and he brutally assassinates the Pandava soldiers, except he misses the 5 main brothers, Yudhishthir, Bhim, Arjun, Nakul, and Sahadev, and Krishna. Otherwise, everyone else on the Pandava side gets assassinated. By the end of this war, pretty much every single person on the Kaurava side and the Pandava side are destroyed, except for the key people, Krishna and the Pandavas. 11th chapter is called Stri Parva. Stri means ladies. This is the chapter for the ladies, and the devastation, the heartbreak, and the lamentation, and the pure despair that they had to go through. These ladies have lost their sons, their fathers, their husbands. It's a very intense chapter. It's one of complete crying and sadness. Then you go chapter 12 and chapter 13, Shanti Parva, Anushasan Parva. In these parvas, some of the dead remaining soldiers who are about to die give their last bits of wisdom, especially Bhishma, the grandson of the Kaurava dynasty. He's dying, even though you have to fight on the other side. But Krishna gets all the Pandavas to round them up and listen to Bhishma Dev's dying words, his last instructions to Yudhishthir on how to govern the kingdom before he leaves his body. It's a very intense, emotional chapter. Then the Pandavas are now coronated. They have become the kings of the world. They perform an Ashwamedha sacrifice. This is a sacrifice where they conduct a campaign to bring the whole world under their control and leadership. Then, chapter 15, you have what is called the Ashram Vasik Parva. This is where the elders of the Kuru dynasty, this is Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, Kunti, these are the fathers and the mothers of the Kauravas and the Pandavas. They let go of the kingdom themselves. They let go of the princely environment and they go to the forest to perform spiritual austerities, for they are now about to leave this world and connect back with the divine. Every single person in this world, no matter who you are, whether you're middle class or working class, or whether you're upper class, whether you live in a little house or a mansion, at some point you should leave your material situation and focus on spiritual consciousness. This is what the Mahabharata is saying. Then, chapter 16, Krishna's own dynasty, the Yadus, have fulfilled their purpose on earth. They end up also having their own massive fratricidal war, and they end up killing each other. This is a sign for Krishna to now unmanifest himself from this world. This is the Mosala Parva. Then finally, we get to the last 2 chapters, chapter 17 and chapter 18. Mahaprasthanaika Parva, the great departure from which one never returns, and Swargarohana Parva, where the Pandavas, they finally finish their own rule of the kingdom, give it to their grandsons, and they attain to a higher destination. This is the massive epic of the Mahabharata, the biggest epic in the world. This is just a very, very brief summary of what it's about. I'll just share this last verse, which is from the Bhagavad Gita, which says, this is Mahabharata, ultimately it's about Krishna. It's about how to connect back with Krishna. And so all the history and the drama is all there to help us to connect with Krishna. And this is a very beautiful verse. Chapter 15, verse 15, second half of the verse. Vedeshcha sarver aham eva vedyo, Vedanta krit vevavid eva chaham. By all the Vedas, which includes the Mahabharata, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedas, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So the whole Mahabharata is there to teach us about duties, is there to teach about life, about society, about psychology, but ultimately, it's even there to, if you want to become rich and successful, the Mahabharata will give you lessons on how to do that as well. But the ultimate goal of the Mahabharata is how to experience a deeper love by connecting with Krishna. That's the ultimate message that the Mahabharata is trying to give us. So it's about us to connect with that, which is why you're all here on this Think Gita sessions, and you're going to do this life hacks course to get to the essence of the Mahabharata. Okay, I shall finish here now.
Wow, thank you so much, Nish. That was amazing. I feel like I have a much deeper understanding of the Mahabharata now. You got to my question, which was what happens afterwards, which is nice. It's interesting to hear how, especially when you were talking about, was it Bhishma who was saying his last dying words?
Yes, in the
That was
Anushasan
Bhishma.
Parva. Yeah.
Yeah. It was really interesting that even though they were on the opposite side, they fought, they still came and heard from, their seniors.
So
Really,
that's the powerful thing, that sometimes if you want to get a deeper a deeper value of life, you have to do your duty, even if it's not comfortable for you. But through that, you can tap into something, a deeper level of consciousness. Bhishma loved the Pandavas, but due to the force of circumstances, he had to fight on the other side. But he never stopped loving it. But this is the amazing thing. Because he's a warrior, he had certain duties to do. And so did the Arjun, right? So it's almost like, Arjun, I love you, but you know that I got to do my duty and you got to do your duty. Because if we don't do our duty, we're going to create bad consciousness for ourselves and for the future of mankind. So we have to do our duty, even though we love each other. So sometimes duty comes the highest, no matter how painful it is. But through that, you experience a deeper level of reality.
wow. Thank you so much. That's really amazing. I'd love to open up. I know it's late, so if people do have to go, that's okay. But I'd love to open up floor. If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand on Zoom and can ask away. I think Hans, I might have a question. Well, there's a couple of people with their hands up.
I can see Daniel and Navania.
Yeah, Danielle, would you like to go first?
Thank you. This has been amazing. So with the gambling match,
Would you
I'm
be able
curious.
to turn on your video as well? We'd love to see you. So
Okay, it's a bit dark, but
that's all right.
okay. So for the gambling match, why did the Pandavas agree to a gambling match in the first place?
Very good question, actually. In retrospect, a lot of people say, they shouldn't accept it. And actually, the Mahabharata also actually says, the commentary-wise, they shouldn't accept it. So the eldest brother of the Pandavas, Yudhishthir, he's the one that accepted it. And let's be very clear. He's a great personality. He's virtuous. He's righteous. One of the things that Mahabharata teaches us is that even righteous people, can sometimes make mistakes. So the commentators on the Mahabharata have said, when I say commentator, I don't mean any commentator. I'm talking about, the sages who have given the commentary on the Mahabharata so we can understand it better. They've said Yudhishthira made a rash decision. Okay, I'll just give you a backdrop here. Two things. Number one, he's a warrior. He's a king. In those days, kings, there were certain things kings could do. Like, for example, they could hunt. They could, have more than one wife. They could, indulge in, a bit of drink here and there, things like that. These are warriors, right? They're like very hot-blooded people running kingdoms. one of the things they would have passion for is gambling, dice. And Yudhishthira was a great king, very virtuous, but he had a passion for gambling, although it's debatable how good he was at it. So that's number one. So he did actually have an attraction for it, a vice, you could say. But more importantly than that, what happened was when he, I mentioned earlier on that when the elders were thinking how to get rid of this rivalry between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, they gave the Pandavas this arid land to look after, which they developed into a beautiful kingdom. When they did that, what happens when a king develops his kingdom? He invites the other kings to his place as a coronation, right? To see the ceremonial establishment of his reign. Yudhishthira did that. Lot of great people came. There was one great sage that came. His name was Sage Vyas. And so Yudhishthira asked for his blessing, saying, "Can you bless me? I can become a great king and rule this kingdom nicely." Vyas said to him, "Absolutely, so be it. You'll rule and you'll be an exemplary king. However, I will also mention this to you. In 14 years from now, you and your kingdom will be involved in a fratricidal apocalyptic war in which the whole Kuru dynasty will practically be annihilated." Now, that's quite a heavy thing to hear. So Yudhishthira is thinking, "Oh my God, I don't want to have this heavy load of responsibility on my head." So then now he thought, okay, how do I avoid this? Maybe I should be more pious and respectful and be more good as a person. So he made a vow at that point that any request that is made to me from a senior, I shall fulfill it. Right? Now, this is where the commentators actually make the point. He shouldn't have made such a rash promise. Because what happened was on the Kaurava side, I mentioned earlier, there's a leader called Duryodhan, and he had a crony, one of his like evil cronies, you could say, like his evil uncle called Shakuni, who was obviously elder. He invited Yudhishthira to the gambling match. And because Yudhishthira was bound by his promise to listen and accept a senior's request, he could not go back on it. So therefore, he was forced to then take part in the gambling match. So there's a lesson to be learned here that even in the Mahabharata, it's teaching us that when you make vows and promises, don't just make it in an act of passion or on a whim. Think carefully before you make promises, because it might just come back to bite you. So that's the reason why he ended up getting entangled in this gambling match. Does that make sense?
Yep, totally. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nish. Thank you, Daniel, for a beautiful question. Navenia, would you like to go next?
Yes, please.
Turn your
My
camera
question,
on and unmute
yeah.
yourself.
Is it unmuted?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. All right. My question was about the same as Daniel's, about the gambling. But what I wanted to know was that, okay, I agree with what you said, that really made sense about why he went ahead and gambled. But if I was not mistaken, according to Mahabharata, like halfway when he was like losing everything, Shakuni was like, "Do you want to bail out? Do you want to bail out right now?" And he was so confident that he will win it eventually that he gambled Draupadi, his wife, away. And my question is, like, as a pillar of dharma, how could he gamble his wife away, even though like he made a promise that he would, listen to what the elders say? So him joining gambling is fine, but he gambled his wife away. And also his brothers did not even like speak up about it.
Yeah. Okay. There's a few points here to clarify. One, you're right. He did actually act rashly. It's said that when he was in the gambling spirit, because he had a weakness for it, which, by the way, this weakness did get nullified later on, right? But at that time, because of this weakness, he got into a frenzy. He got into a frenzy of this gambling match, and therefore he couldn't stop himself. It was almost like he was on a downward spiral and he couldn't stop himself. It's almost like, sometimes we end up getting ourselves into a situation which we can't come out of, or we get so much into that moment that we kind of lose our sense of rationality and reason. So that's what happened with Yudhishthira at the time, that he actually thought himself that he can just go further and further and regain his dignity and his honor. But in the process, he actually ended up sinking further and further into despair. That's point number one. Point number two, the brothers. The gambling match is a very interesting topic because it's actually talking about dharma. His second brother, Bhima, actually did stand up. He stood up and he actually says to Yudhishthir, stop this frenzied nonsense that you're doing of gambling everything away. If you don't stop, Yudhishthir, I'm going to personally grab you and I'm going to burn your hands. And at that point, he was actually going to go and grab Yudhishthir. The third brother, Arjun, who I'm sure you all know, obviously from the Bhagavad Gita, he then rushed and grabbed Bhima and saying that, look, no, Bhima, we can't do this because we're going to be transgressing laws of dharma here. Even though the whole thing was against dharma. But even, it's almost like you get so much into the nitty-gritty of the rules of the dharma that you forget the bigger picture of the whole grand bad against dharma thing, which we call adharma, the adharmic events that are happening here, but you get so confused in your own nitty-gritty dharma that you forget about the bigger adharma that's going on. So that's why it was basically the whole gambling match was a complete fiasco for the Pandavas. They lost their sense of composure. They didn't know what they were doing. Not only that, even the Kuru elders who were there, like Bhishma Dev and Drona, wise, noble people, they also lost their composure and didn't know what to do. To the point where when Draupadi was being dragged in, she actually looked at the elders, at Bhishma Dev and the king at that time, King Dhritarashtra, and said, is this righteous that I'm being dragged here as a queen? Whose property am I? If Yudhishthir himself has been made a slave, who is he to claim me as his property? What right does he even claim to bring me in to be wagered here? Bhishma, answer. Dhritarashtra, answer. My husband, he's lost his potency. He's not going to answer anything. He's become useless. In fact, it said that Draupadi, from that point onwards, would regularly chastise Yudhishthir when they were in the forest. It was only after the Kurukshetra war was finished that Draupadi's mood towards Yudhishthir calmed down. So let me just break it down here. I don't want to criticize the Pandavas. They are great people. They are, please understand this. They are not bad people, but they had a moment of failure, which had deep consequences for which they had to pay for. There is another deeper aspect here as well. The food that the people at that time were eating in the Kaurava household was also contaminated. It said that because there was such bad consciousness in that royal household, that the food was being infused with negative consciousness of the people, which is why the people there were contaminated with this low consciousness, and they were losing their sense of perspective. That's why it's said that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that when you eat food, make sure that it is actually what's the word? When you eat food, make sure that it's cooked in the right consciousness, and actually it's good to actually offer it to the higher, you could say divinity before you take it. Then actually that food becomes sanctified. It can affect your conscience. That's why they say you are what you eat. If you eat food made in good consciousness, it gives you a good mentality. If you eat food which is made in bad consciousness, where it's affected too much with negativity or anger, greed, madness, illusion, that consciousness goes into the food, which will affect your mindset. So there's a whole combination of factors which led to this complete, like you could say, catastrophe. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was very well explained.
Can I just add to that? Hi. Oh, has it finished?
Hello? Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say that I'm glad you mentioned the negative vibes, because didn't Shakuni have a boon, and the dice that he played with were made of some special bones of, I don't know, some, so the dice would always win. And I think that also got Yudhishthira entranced into the game. I don't know
Yes,
if you.
so Shakuni's bone, the dice that Shakuni was used to play with were actually the bones of his brothers. What happened, there was one time when Shakuni was imprisoned in the prison cell with his brothers, and they were only given one plate of food to eat between them. And if all of them tried to share it, they'd all die of starvation. So what they decided, the brothers said that, you know what, Shakuni, you're the most intelligent out of all of us. We will let us die and sacrifice our lives so you can live and you can have the food each day that's in the prison cell. The bones that come from our bodies, you can use it to carve dice, and our consciousness will be infused in those bones from which you make the dice. So when you play dice, you can command those dice, and our conscience will be there in those dice to do your bidding. So there's that as well.
Wow, that's really informative. I didn't know that. I thought they were just like biased dice.
Yeah, but they are, but because they got their brother's consciousness in that dice
Wow.
to do his bidding. Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible. Thank you so much. Chaitanya, would you like to ask a question?
Yes. So actually, someone asked me this question, but I didn't have an answer. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we always hear Krishna saying that it's about doing good things, like about love and about being a good person and about dharma. But also at the same time, Krishna is advocating for a violent activity, like a war, like you must fight. And wouldn't it have been better if like you just killed the perpetrators, like the 100 Kauravas, instead of a massive war where massive amounts of people died? Like I don't have a good answer for this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice question. Maybe if I can, maybe this could be the last question, only because I'm conscious of time and I've got another task to do. Actually, I've got to write a script for a drama. Okay, so I'll answer that. So actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, there's a nice verse actually which relates to this. It says, "Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge." That in every age I come and I annihilate the miscreants and I restore dharma in this age. And so the understanding is this: what happens in the world's life cycle? What happens when the negative forces in the world start to multiply and increase, and they start to affect the consciousness, the society, the psychology, the political landscape, the economic landscape, the military landscape, the environmental landscape? When negative conscious forces start to amass in the world, what Krishna sometimes does is he will let it build up to a crescendo, then come, and then in one clean swipe, he gets rid of the negative forces, right? It's almost like, sometimes, okay, I'll be honest, I'm guilty of this myself. I know this is not the right thing to do. Like I try to clean my house on a regular basis, right? You know how it is. You try to clean actually, the house is one thing, the garden. Okay, that's a big one. What happens, ideally, I'd like to maintain my garden so it's clean all the time. I'm going to confess I'm just a human being. Sometimes I don't always clean my garden on a regular basis. The weeds are growing. Now it's coming to spring, because during the winter, I'm not touching the weeds, right? So they're slowly growing. Now I can see the weeds are really starting to come through. So now I know that I'm going to come in one of these weekends, because the weather's getting good now. I'm going to go to the garden, and in one go, I'm going to get that razor knife, the metal razor brushes, and I'm going to scrape, and then get rid of those weeds and make it all nice and clean again, right? In one go. So sometimes what Krishna does, if this world is like the garden, where those weeds are growing, Krishna will come and in one go gets rid of them. So sometimes Krishna orchestrates these big events, not just to kill, get rid of one rotten apple or two rotten apples here and there, but in one go, clean swipe the negative forces so that dharma can be fully flourishing again, right? So that we clear out the weeds so that the nice, flowers and stuff can smoothly grow. So that's why Krishna will do that, where he orchestrates a lot of big things happening. That's point one. Point two, for Krishna to get the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita through to the society, he needs big drama and incidences which people will be attracted to get his message through. Taking out one person here and there and then using that as a reason to give the Bhagavad Gita, people are not going to listen. People don't want to listen to spiritual stuff in this day and age anyway. People don't want to listen actually to anything. People want to just be entertained, right? This is how we are, right? Even when you listen to like a Gita class or a talk, you know, half the people are probably falling asleep, right? But you tell them, oh, what do you want to watch the Mahabharata Star Plus Mahabharata series or something? Yeah. I'm going to watch it. I want to watch it. It's going to be fun. So therefore, sometimes these big dramas are there as a way for the Bhagavad Gita to be injected into the consciousness of people, right? So so those are kind of like two, I would say, key reasons why it happened the way it did. Because it wasn't just the Kauravas that were bad. There were many other negative forces there that also had to be extinguished through this war.
Yeah, that is an incredible answer. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nish. That's been amazing. Super insightful. Nish, you're one of my dear friends, so we're always grateful to have you on, and I love how you really help us understand the philosophy of the Gita and the Mahabharata. So thank you so much today for joining us. And thank you to everyone for coming along. We'd love to close there, and just as a reminder, to sign up for the Think Gita Life Hacks course, where the link is in the chat, and I'm going to send it once more. So yeah, please do come along. Nish, do you have any final words, or should we close?
No, I just want to say, thank you for bringing me on to this section. I think this is my first Think Gita session, but I've been hearing a lot about Think Gita over the last year or two. It's amazing. I mean, I know this was the kind of masterminded by Swayam Bhagavan Kesha Swami Maharaj, who's actually he's, what can I say about him? He's very close to me in my life. He's my guide, my mentor. He's actually also my, spiritually speaking, he's actually my god brother. So we were initiated by the same guru, and he's very close to me in my life. So anything I can do to help his projects in any little way, then I'm happy to do so. And I hope that, all of you can just go deeper into the message of the Gita and implement it. Two things: implement the messages of the Gita in your own life, and also nicely, not forcefully, but nicely share it with other people as well. That's what I'd say. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nish. Thank you, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of the evening, and we'll see you all next week.